Winter Danger, Chapter 9. For a moment, Cage's heart raced. Was it Jared, come back to stay? No, this was some farm body, wrapped to his ears in a match coat. Cage stepped inside the cabin door. "Company coming," he told Uncle Adam. The visitor helloed from outside, and Uncle Adam swung the door wide. "It's Telford Craig," he said. "Mend the fire, Sam. He'll need warming for fair." "He's our nearest neighbor," Bert explained to Cage. "Don't live hardly 7 mile from here." Cage looked up and recognized the man who had given Jared and him directions about how to get to the Tadlocks. The man stepped into the room, shaking the snow from his coat. He greeted all the Tadlocks and nodded to Cage. "I see you found 'em all right," he said. "This here is my nephew, Cage Amos," said Uncle Adam. "He's a-stayin' with us for a spell." The newcomer looked quickly around the room. "He's a-wondering where Jared is," Cage thought, "but he ain't going to ask, and wouldn't none of us know what to tell him if he did." "Telford, how's your wife and young'uns?" Aunt Jess asked. "I hope ain't none of 'em sick. Ain't this weather a sight? Children, let Mr. Craig get to the fire." Sam and Martha slid to one side, and Mr. Craig held his hands out to the flames. "My hands be so cold it's a wonder they don't put the fire out," he said with a wink at Sam. He stood in front of the hearth and told the news while he turned himself before the fire to warm all sides. The news was bad. Everywhere folks were short of meat. Some had lost their cattle or other stock in the cold. Hogs froze in their pens. Cows died of all sorts of strange ailments. One of Mr. Craig's own cows had died. A bear had gotten his 2 hogs. Some folks were sick, too. Men had been frostbit out trying to find a little meat for their families. There was Tom Dowell, down with some strange kind of fever, with a heaviness in his chest. The doctor came to bleed him, and his blood was black as night and solid like liver. Tom was mighty low. You could hear him breathing before you opened the cabin door. "But I come after something for some other sick folks," Telford Craig went on. "Henry Renfro and his young'uns and his old woman been mighty bad off. You know, Henry put all that bottom land in wheat. Well, it was sick wheat. They made bread out of it, and they had to throw it all out. Some of the Tads was mighty sick from eating the bread, and now they ain't got no more meal. Not enough to last another day. I been round, getting up what I can for 'em. Henry's still too weak to get about in this snow. If you could spare a little meal, they'd be obliged to you." "I told Henry that their field was too rich for wheat," said Uncle Adam. "You got a poke we can put the meal in? Henry's welcome to share with us. We'd not have corn enough to spit at if'n Henry hadn't given me a hand last spring when the boys couldn't help. We're proud to do him a favor." Aunt Jess took the deerskin sack Telford Craig drew from under his match coat and went in the lean-to. In a moment she was back with the bag bulging with meal. "And here's a little jerk," she said as she put a handful of the precious dried meat on top of the meal. "If they been sick, they'll be a-needin' meat. I wish I had some fowl to send 'em." "This here's fine," said the visitor. "They'll be mighty obliged to you. When Henry gets better, he and some others aim to go to Salisbury, if'n the weather takes a turn for the better. They say they's meal a-plenty there if a body has money to pay for it. Since game's so hard to come by, I reckon we'll all do well to send to Salisbury, far a journey as it is." "Yes," Aunt Jess answered. "When meat goes short, the meal barrel goes down mighty quick, but this weather's bound to break soon." "I don't know," Telford Craig shook his head. "I stopped by your pappy's place yesterday when I was a-going to Renfro's. Your pappy's mighty bad off with the rheumatics. He didn't ask for help, but I 'low he could use one of these boys to tote wood and take care of the horse." Aunt Jess looked worried. "I aimed to send Bird over there this very week, and then it snowed so hard I was afeared to let him go." "I'll go now," said Bird. "I can walk back with Mr. Craig. I can stay till the weather breaks, I reckon." Aunt Jess flew around, gathering up an extra quilt for Bird to take, finding stockings for him to wear, and worrying over whether he had enough clothes. Here, she said, taking down another poke from a peg. I'll give you a mite of meal to take with you. I know Pappy didn't make no big crop, and it's hard to feed somebody you ain't been expecting to feed. Cage looked up. The Tadlocks hadn't been expecting to feed him. If the winter hadn't come on so all-fired cold, he could have trapped game, since Jared had taken all his powder and lead. He could have rocked squirrels who chattered at him from the treetops to make a tasty stew and help out for his part of the victuals. But now there was nothing he could do but eat the Tadlock's meal and share their fire. He glanced uneasily at Telford Craig, as if the visitor might see that he was a no-account woodsy, not good for anything but filling his belly and warming on the hearth. "Goodbye," Bird said to Cage. "Keep Sam out of trouble if'n you can. Marthy, you mind Matildy. Don't let her get frostbit whilst I'm gone. She ain't got no moccasins, remember?" Martha burst into tears. "Matildy don't want for Bird to go off," she sobbed. "I'll be back soon, honey," Bird comforted, ruffling her hair. "I'll bring you a pretty." Uncle Adam pulled up the latch, and the door swung open. Aunt Jess stood in the door, waving to Bird and calling messages for her mother and father. "Now, ain't Telford a good soul?" she asked as she closed the door. "Out tramping the hills in this weather to get corn for the Renfros? There ain't many neighborly enough to do it." Cage crouched on a stool, thinking of the Renfros. Like him, they must take somebody else's bread to eat. He wondered how Henry Renfro would pay his debts. It didn't seem to worry Uncle Adam and Aunt Jess. They'd given away a heap of meal, and not one word was said about paying it back. It wasn't the sort of thing Jared would do, Cage knew. There was no more snow for several days, only more cold and more cold. The nights were restless, full of the unhappy cries of deer, freezing and dying, and the long howls of wolves. In the morning, when Cage and Sam went to the cowshed, the wolves scattered from around the door. Every night they lurked and waited, hoping to get inside where the cows and the horse would be easy victims. Uncle Adam swore at them, and one morning he killed one with the axe. "The varmint come right on in the cowshed," he told Cage. "This weather's cruel hard on 'em. I tell you, it's the end of the world when wolves come right inside a barn and let a man kill 'em." One day, Cage and Sam went hunting with Uncle Adam. Cage didn't want to go, but he didn't know how to refuse. He hated to tell that Jared had taken all his lead and powder. He went to get his rifle and found his powder horn half full and a dozen lead balls in his shot pouch. He never knew how they got there, but he reckoned Bird must have put 'em there. They hunted half a day and saw no trace of game. Finally, as they were about to turn home, they came on a deer dying in the snow. Uncle Adam shot the poor creature, and they toted it home, but it was poor eating. What meat there was on its bones was stringy and tough and rank tasting. Aunt Jess boiled the bones and made a broth for Martha, who was looking paler and more peaked every day. Bird had been gone for about 4 weeks. The new year had begun, but the weather had never let up. Food was so scarce, Cage ate as little as possible. One night he woke and lay in the firelight, remembering the nights he'd spent with Jared when hunger had kept him awake. He was surprised to find a boy could go hungry on a farm, too. The cows were restless. Cage could hear the sound of hoofs and the bumping of big bodies against the log walls. One of the cows lowed. The horse neighed loudly, and then there was a terrible screaming bellow. Cage sat up. Sam only stirred beside him, but Uncle Adam was already out of bed. "Something's got the cow," Aunt Jess groaned. "Light the lantern, Cage," Uncle Adam said, as he tied his moccasins. Cage seized the lantern and bent over the fire. Sam struggled up off his pallet and brought Cage his rifle. It seemed to Cage he'd never seen a candle so hard to light. "Hurry," urged Sam. Finally, the candle was lit. Uncle Adam seized the lantern and ran out the door. Cage knelt to put on his moccasins. Bellows and shrieks came from the cowshed. "Don't be so slow. I can't wait all night," Sam cried impatiently. He turned and ran after his father, with Cage's rifle in his hand. The axe was lying on the hearth. Cage picked it up and stepped out into the night. The moonlight was so bright on the snow, he could hardly make out the tiny flame of the lantern in Uncle Adam's hand. In a minute he had caught up with the others. As they came near the barn, Cage thought he'd never heard such awful noises. Uncle Adam flung up the heavy bar on the door and swung it wide. He held the lantern high, and its light fell on the flat head and powerful shoulders of a panther standing over the mangled body of the cow. As the light struck it, the catamount lifted its head, opening its bloody jaws in a snarl. The shadows from the swaying lantern raced up and down the shed walls, while the horse and heifer whined with fear. Cage took a quick step back. The axe was awkward and heavy in his hand. He longed for the familiar feel of his rifle lock under his fingers. Then the great jaws and glowing eyes were coming straight at him.